All right, I would like to call the budget meeting September 29th, 2025 to order. Good evening, everyone, and our esteemed guest here tonight. My name is Adam Russell, Councillor and Chair of the Budget Committee. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given. And if assistance is required, please see the Deputy Clerk. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside Town Hall. Also, please ensure that your cell phones are on silent or are turned off. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available on all our videos by selecting the closed captioning button on the bottom right of the video. In recognition of it being National Day of Truth and Reconciliation tomorrow, I would like to read the land acknowledgement. The Town of Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee and the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credits of First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. In addition to a community walk was held last week, there will be a flag raising tomorrow morning in support of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation with several staff and community partners in attendance. Roll call, members of committee are in attendance in person or remotely, with regrets from Councilor Gemma and Councilor Bernay. We also have staff in attendance and virtually. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Do any members of council have any amendments to the order of the agenda? Seeing none, we have no statutory public meetings. We also have no delegations. We have no consent agenda items, so we are going to move on to the regular agenda. We are now considering item 8.1, Report FN-09-25, Overview of the Strong Mayor Budget. Mayor Easton will provide introductory comments. Madam Mayor, please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to I just want to check something with the clerk. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, Mr. CAO. I was just checking because I wanted to start this meeting on a rather sad note, but one that is most appropriate for us to consider at this time. And I want to take a moment, colleagues and council, staff, members of the public, to acknowledge the passing of Chair Jim Bradley. Chair Bradley dedicated his life to public service, and his leadership has left a lasting mark on Niagara and beyond. And there are many people who are commenting with their own personal and professional stories. He really touched so many people. He brought wisdom and dignity. He brought a steady hand to the role of regional chair. He carried himself with a kind of humility and grace that earned respect from colleagues across all levels of government. On a personal note, I had the privilege of knowing Jim for over 4 decades. During that time, I witnessed his skill, his deep commitment to public service, his unwavering belief in the importance of collaboration, his ability to listen, and his unwavering belief in the importance of collaboration. He led with conviction, with kindness that was unmatched. And he taught us all the importance under any circumstances to maintain civility and decorum in the council chambers. On behalf of council and the Town of Lincoln and the staff of the Town of Lincoln, I want to extend our deepest condolences to his family, to his friends, to his close friends, and his colleagues at the region, to everyone in St. Catharines, where he was so well appreciated. His absence will be deeply felt. I ask that we observe a brief moment of silence in his memory. Thank you. And now, as Chair Bradley would say, we will press on to important matters. As we begin tonight's budget discussion, I want to share a few words about how we move forward together. This year, the Strong Mayor Framework sets out a new structure for how budgets are prepared and approved. And while the legislation may shift certain responsibilities, I want to be clear that my approach as mayor remains rooted in collaboration, in openness, and respect for council. Mayors have been given direction from the province, and they are very clear about what their priorities are. They did not write a set of rules outside of legislation, and therefore I am taking the license to behave as I normally do, because I have a high regard for this council and for the process that we use to make decisions. Strong mayor powers are not a substitute for teamwork. They do not replace the value of dialogue, of debate, and compromise. And I believe that our best decisions for Lincoln have been and will be made when we engage fully with one another, when we listen carefully to our residents and build on the collective wisdom of our residents across the town, not only the individual ideas, thoughts, or beliefs, and around this table. The challenges we face, whether they are about growth, infrastructure, affordability, or quality of life, are too complex to tackle alone. They require us to lean on each other's perspectives, on our experience, and our ideas. I'm committed to that approach, and I know Council shares that same commitment. So as we enter this budget process, there are individuals around this table, Madam Clerk, Mr. CAO, that will help us as we collaborate at the heart of our work. And when we need to have the legislation explained, they will be there to interpret it for us. However, our focus is to work together. We can ensure that the decisions we make reflect both fiscal responsibility and the aspirations of the community we serve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for those kind remarks regarding, again, Chair Jim Bradley, and also, again, the introductory commentary on this year's budget. I'm now going to turn it over to our CAO for some introductory comments regarding the budget process from the staff side. Mr. CAO, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to you, to our Vice Chair, to Mayor Easton, and to members of Council. Tonight marks what I call the informal introduction and beginning of our 2026 budget process. As Mayor Easton said, while the framework is new this year under the Strong Mayor approach, what hasn't changed is staff's commitment to sound financial management, community engagement, and evidence-based decision-making. And as I said, those remain unchanged principles for us. The process we take as staff is consistent. We analyze the data, engage our staff in the departments and in the community. We review needs against resources and ensure council has the best possible information to make informed choices. Strong mayor powers may shift timelines or technical responsibilities, but they do not change our philosophy or our values and we remain committed to openness, accountability, and collaboration. I want to pause on a phrase we often hear, needs versus wants. Too often it's used as if our community needs are clear and absolute, while wants are discretionary. In reality, that line is very blurry. Safe roads, responsive fire services, parks and trails, cultural programs, affordable recreation, these aren't just wants. They are the very investments that make Lincoln safe, livable, and attractive for families and businesses. When residents tell us what matters to them, they are speaking to both needs and aspirations, and both must be weighed thoughtfully. It's also important to remember that roughly 2/3 of every tax dollar that's collected in Lincoln goes to the region of Niagara and to education, while about 1/3 stays here with the town. That means we must be even more deliberate in how we invest those local dollars to maximize value for residents. Over the past number of years, I would say we have demonstrated this fiscal discipline by carefully investing capital dollars through our capital levy and what I often refer to as putting money in the bank, and in some cases, pausing much-needed staff hiring. These steps were taken deliberately to ensure our budgets aligned with Council's financial targets and to preserve the town's long-term financial sustainability. Our role as your administrative team is to balance that fiscal responsibility with community building. We do that by asking what delivers value, what builds resilience for the future, what sustains quality of life for our residents. Those questions go deeper than needs versus wants labels. They help us to arrive at a budget that is responsible, that is realistic, and that reflects the community we're all building together. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Charlotte, and of course, Julie and I will be available following the presentation to answer questions, but Charlotte will begin to walk us through the presentation, the analysis, and the path forward on the 2026 budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Tunikaitis, thank you for attending the podium. You are more than welcome to proceed.
Thank you, Chair Russell. So tonight we're looking at an overview of the strong mayor powers and the budget process. As well, we'll talk about the proposed Lincoln 2026 budget process. So we'll do a recap of how the legislation rolled out for the strong mayor powers. On April 9th, 2025, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing announced the expansion of strong mayor powers to the town of Lincoln under OREG 530-22, effective May 1st, 2025. Strong mayor powers grant the mayor authority to act on matters related to provincial priorities as defined in OREG 580-22, such as building new residential units and constructing and maintaining infrastructure to support housing. Strong mayor powers will continue to apply as provincial priorities evolve. The mayor may choose to delegate some of the specific powers and duties under the regulation. However, proposing the budget is not one of the powers and duties which can be delegated. So the wording in the legislation is the head of council shall. And when it gives us that word shall, it means it's something that we shall do. It's not something which can be delegated. All mayoral decisions and directions must be submitted in writing to the clerk and circulated to council. Unless exempt under MFIPA, these documents are public and will be posted on the town's website. And we've provided here the link to the website where all of the mayor's decisions and directions are posted. So the budget process is outlined in the regulation, and parts of my presentation this evening may seem a little bit repetitive. I learn best by repetition, so I trust that you'll bear with me while we go through these steps and we talk about it at large, and then we talk about it for Lincoln specifically. The first step in the budget process is that the mayor tables the budget, and this has to be by February 1st. At that time, The budget must be made available to each member of council, the clerk, and the public. The second step of the process is the council review period, and that can be up to 30 days. Council may propose amendments by resolution. The amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerk as per the proposed timeline. If no amendments are submitted, related meetings will be canceled, and each amendment is considered individually. So it's not that they all get saved up and go as a group, it's they each go one at a time for consideration. The third step is the mayor's veto period, and that is up to 10 days. The mayor may veto amendments with written reasons to the clerk and council. And then the fourth stage is the council override period. That's up to 15 days. Council may override a veto with a 2/3 vote of all members. Now, the mayor and council may shorten their respective review, veto, and override periods by agreement, and you'll hear later on in the meeting, the proposal that we have for the town of Lincoln involves some small shortening of those periods to accommodate the meeting timelines. Now, I've bolded the word adoption here because this is a bit of a change from the old process. Once the amendment, veto, and override periods conclude, if they're applicable, the budget is deemed adopted and there's no approval vote in the process. So that's an important part of the process for all of us to understand. In the past, the budget would come forward, there would be a vote on the budget, and the vote is what would determine whether the budget passes. What happens now is that there are legislated time periods, and when those time periods lapse, if there's no further steps in that process, it's deemed adopted. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through. Council still passes a levy bylaw under Section 290 of the Municipal Act to raise required revenues. If the mayor does not propose the budget by February 1st, council must prepare and adopt the budget. If the mayor is prohibited from preparing an aspect of the budget due to a pecuniary or financial interest in a specific matter, subject to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, council may pass a resolution to amend the proposed budget with respect to that specific matter, and the mayor may not veto the resolution. So I think that's an important part of the legislation for the public as well to understand in terms of transparency and accountability. So this is the slide that shows the big picture. There's basically 4 stages. The mayor presents the budget, then there's a up to 30-day amendment period, then there's an up to 10-day veto period, and then up to 15 days for the override period. This shows the same process, but in a little bit more detail and how it moves from one stage to the other. So if we look at the top, it begins when the head of council provides the proposed budget to council. At that point, it depends whether council passes a resolution to make amendments to the budget. If not, the arrow points down. The budget is deemed adopted at that point in time. So if there are no amendments, it becomes adopted as the mayor tabled it. If yes, if they do pass a resolution to make an amendment, it moves over to the right. Then it becomes a question of whether the mayor exercises the veto on the council amendments. If the answer to that is no, it moves down, and then the budget is deemed adopted at that point as amended. So if amendments came forward and the mayor does not veto them, it becomes adopted as amended. However, if the mayor does exercise the veto, then it's yes, and it moves on to the next stage of the process. The last stage is the council override of the mayor's veto, and that's within 15 days and a 2/3 vote. If council does not override the mayor's veto, it's the no arrow that goes all the way back around to the beginning, and the budget is deemed adopted as tabled by the mayor? If the answer is yes, the budget is deemed adopted with the inclusion of the amendments as provided by council. Under the Strong Mayor budget process, there is also an outlined process for in-year budget amendments. The mayor may propose in-year amendments for the purpose of raising additional amounts from property tax. The mayor's proposed budget amendment must be shared with each member of council and the clerk and made available to the public. Council has 21 days to amend, or the proposal is deemed adopted. So it's a similar but slightly abbreviated process. The mayor may veto the amendments within 5 days, and council may override within 10 days by a 2/3 vote. The mayor and council may shorten their respective review, veto, and override periods. And at the end of the process, similar to the last one we discussed, a budget amendment which has not been overridden is deemed to be adopted. Now, I do want to highlight at the bottom of this slide, this process pertains specifically to budget adjustments which are needed to raise additional property taxes. For in-year adjustments with identified funding sources, staff have been proceeding as in prior years via reports to council that are available on public agendas. So for example, when we bring our capital report forward, if we have a budget adjustment on a project because there's new grant funding, because there's maybe a funding source that's available from our water or wastewater rates, those adjustments still come forward as they normally have because they don't require us to raise additional property taxes. So we talked about the legislated process, and now we want to talk about the proposed process for Lincoln. Staff have prepared a proposed budget timeline which would meet the legislated timelines. So on October 27th, the plan is that on that night, the binders would be given to council. It would include budget information similar to the budget information that's been provided in the past. On October 28th, the mayor starts the budget process because the agenda for the budget meeting will be published. And so if you remember, we talked about the mayor has to provide the budget to the clerk, to council, and to the public. So at that point in time, all of those things have been done and the budget process starts. November 5th, there would be a budget meeting. And we propose that at that meeting, we'll provide budget survey and engagement results, the capital presentation, and other ancillary information if applicable. We've also provided a budget amendment request form template, which is Appendix B to the report that went forward this evening. This will help the mayor, council, and staff to understand the proposed amendment. So because those amendments need to be in writing to the clerk, I'm sure all of council, the mayor, and staff would like to understand the implications of the amendment that's proposed, any operational impacts, confirming what the cost impacts are. We do ask that those forms be completed. We are requesting the amendment forms for the November 5th meeting on October 31st to allow time for review and comment. So November 5th is a Wednesday. The 31st is the Friday before. So what we're requesting is by that Friday, if we have the amendment forms, it gives staff a chance to review, confirm the calculations, provide any operational commentary, and then have them ready for council. Next, there would be a November 12th budget meeting. At this budget meeting, there would be an operating presentation, the library presentation, and for that meeting, similar to the one before, we request the amendment forms by November 7th, which is the Friday before that meeting, very similar timing. And then last, on November 24th, there would be a budget amendment meeting if required. So amendments could come forward on the 5th or the 12th, as we've discussed. But if after those meetings, there are further amendments that council wishes to make, they would go forward at the November 24th meeting. The amendments, similar to the other ones, must be submitted in writing to the clerk. Each amendment will be considered individually. If there are no other amendments, this meeting would be canceled. So the November 5th and November 12th meetings, where staff are providing presentation, those will happen regardless, because that's where we intend to provide those presentations. But the 24th, that meeting will only occur if council has further amendments after the 12th. So in order to follow this whole process, it would require council to shorten the 30-day amendment period by 3 days, because we're trying to coincide the legislated timelines with our typical meeting schedule. And staff are requesting the amendment forms for the November 24th meeting by November 14th. This gives us, again, time for review and comment, and it also allows us to determine if a meeting is required on the 24th or whether it would be canceled. If there are no amendments, similar to what I was explaining earlier, the budget would be deemed adopted after November 24th as provided by the mayor. So assuming council agrees to shorten their 30-day period and end it on November 24th, after that date, if no amendments have come forward, the budget is deemed adopted as the mayor provided it. If there are amendments, then December 2nd is the date we proposed for the mayoral veto. If there are amendments, and if the mayor vetoes an amendment, the veto would be provided in writing with reasons to the clerk and council. This would also require the mayor to shorten the 10-day veto period by 2 days. If there are no vetoes, the budget would be deemed adopted after December 2nd as amended. So we went through the first timeline. If we get to this time period and it lapses without the mayor vetoing, the budget is deemed adopted at the end of the period. We wouldn't need to move to the override period because there would be no vetoes to override. And then lastly, the December 15th council meeting is the meeting where there could be overrides, so that would be the last day of the override period, if applicable. So if there are amendments, and if they are vetoed by the mayor, then council could vote on whether to override the veto with a vote of 2/3 of council, and this would require council to shorten the 15-day override period by 2 days. If the process has progressed to an override vote, the budget would be deemed adopted after December 15th. So I know, again, I may sound a little bit repetitive, but at each one of these stages, if that stage lapses and there's no amendment or there's no veto or there's no override, it's adopted at the end of that period automatically. I did also want to highlight that throughout the process, if there are amendments, there could be a combination of outcomes. So some amendments could pass, some could be vetoed, and some vetoes could be overridden, but some not, because as we said, they get considered one at a time. So because of that, there's, it's a complicated decision tree with a lot of arrows in it, but we'll get there. So this is the same slide that we showed earlier, but we've added in the proposed dates just to illustrate, again, for council and the public. So the head of council provides the proposed budget to council. That'll be October 28th when it gets published online. Council can pass a resolution to make an amendment to the budget up to November 24th. The mayor would exercise her veto on council amendments if applicable by December or on December 2nd. And then council could override the mayor's veto on amendments with a 2/3 vote by December 15th. And then this just kind of shows the summary of those time periods and the dates that we're proposing. So under the legislated timelines, it's a 55-day period, a whole 55-day process, and the shortened timeline would be a 48-day process. So each little bit is shortened by 2 to 3 days just to keep to those meeting timelines. And in order to do that, council would have to agree to shorten their timelines, and the mayor would agree to shorten her timeline so that we all know exactly what those dates will be. We all know the timelines to expect. And that's the end of this part of the presentation.
Thank you, Director Tunikitis. Do members of council have questions? And I see Councilor Murray is first. Councilor Murray, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to Charlotte, it's going to be a really interesting process, and I appreciate how much time has gone into making sure that it's as clear as possible so that we're all on the same page. And so I apologize if my question seems like you've already answered it, but it's the first time we're going through it. So the very first thing that you told us was that the mayor tables the budget by February 1st, and yet when I look at this schedule, we're looking at trying to be completing the process by December 15th, which is a relatively large gap. So if I can just get a little clarity as to why we're pushing it so much forward if February 1st is the deadline.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Director Tunikitis?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the councillor. The February 1st is the latest date that the mayor has to table the budget by. So under the legislation, if the mayor doesn't table the budget by February 1st, then council prepares the budget, but that doesn't preclude us from starting the budget process earlier. So for Lincoln specifically, we have a financial principles policy under which council has indicated their desire to have an earlier approval process for the budget. It's something we've done every year that I've been here in order to help us with procurement, to get out for the procurement process earlier, to allow staff to know the budgets that they have to work with earlier in the year. And that's why we're proposing a fairly similar timeline to previous years, but still fitting within the new legislation.
That's good. That's great. I know that we always are on time with our budget. I know that some neighboring municipalities are doing it considerably later, and I recognize the value of having that set in place before January. When we're talking about timing again then, the piece that is different this year, I think, is that it seems to me that we won't be having as much discussion about items. So I just wanted to clarify if that is true. So if I understand, we're going to get our budgets, we're going to submit a written amendment. So I'm going to be at home going through it, and then I'm going to say, this is something that I want to change. But we won't have had a conversation around the council table first to get other people's viewpoints or other people's, anyone's really feedback on. So I might ask a question about, how come this is like this, or what have we considered this? There will be none of that piece anymore. Am I right in understanding that?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, there will still be opportunity for discussion. I'll let the CAO jump in if he wants to add anything, but basically the November 5th and November 12th meetings where we provide the capital and operating presentation is still an opportunity for council to ask questions and have discussion. And amendments can be kept until the meeting on the 12th. Amendments could be kept until the 24th if that's the timing that council would prefer to do it. So there is still that, it would be a 27-day timeline for reading the budget and discussing the budget. So our intention in the mayor directing us to continue a similar process is still to have that discussion and the opportunity to ask questions. And I think staff would also be available, but I'll just ask if the CAO has anything else to add on that.
Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think Charlotte nailed most of it, Councillor. The process isn't going to change that much more, notwithstanding the fact that there's some things that are dictated. We're presenting to council. There'll be a chance for you to ask us questions. There'll be a chance in between that for you to send us away for information. It's going to put a little bit more of an onus, I would suggest, on members of council if you want to make changes, that you be very specific with those changes, that you be very deliberate with those changes, that you engage with staff and the mayor on those changes, versus something that sometimes finds its way onto council floors, and I'm not suggesting this council, but around various councils that seems to be interjected at the last minute and, let's cut this, let's cut that. It's a little bit more deliberate now, and what do you want to cut? Why do you want to cut it? What are the implications of that cutting? And then asking us to report back. So you will still have a chance to dialogue with your colleagues, both around the table. You'll still have a chance to dialogue with senior staff as you've done in the past.
Thank you. And one last question, if I may. The template that you have for the amendments, first time we'll be using it again. Is the expectation that we're giving a very fulsome rationale for our amendment in terms of, we've got are we looking for, perhaps I should ask Mayor Easton this, if Mayor Easton is looking for, detailed, a real case for why we want an amendment, or is it a more snapshots, bullet points, and a conversation would happen?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, I can start, but I do think it might be for the CAO or the mayor to provide additional commentary. I think the intention is to provide enough information for the colleagues around council to understand the proposed amendment, the rationale, for staff to understand so that we can cost out the implications. Because I know, for example, sometimes what happens is someone will say to me, well, if we cut this thing, we save $70,000. And I'll say, okay, but it has DC funding against it of 50%, so it's actually only going to reduce the tax levy by $35,000. So that's an example of the type of thing that it's helpful if we have that information so that we know what's trying to be accomplished, and we can look into that as a staff and provide that commentary and confirm that the expectations of the budget impact are actually what would happen. But in terms of what else is being expected, I'm not sure if the CAO or the mayor wants to provide any additional commentary.
Madam Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Murray, there's two things that I'm going to be looking for that I think need to be maintained throughout the process. Any bylaw that exists, any survey that we have done that's not on a shelf but is actively involved, like the official plan or the zoning bylaw, or any other bylaw that we operate from, if there's a disregard for that, then that's something that I would be looking at and I would be asking questions about. The other thing that I think is going to be very important, because the costing will be sorted out with staff, is the rationale. What's motivating the individual councillor to look at this group of ideas or services and eliminate them? And so if there isn't a clear picture about what that is and the potential implications, then I would have some difficulty accepting it as a well-thought-out solution. The other thing that I want to comment on, which I think is very important, is the issue of risk management and risk assessment. And so, although there are many, many reasons why we should eliminate things from the budget that may make it easy to get to where we want to be, they may not be in the best interest of the town as a whole. And as you well know, we do get pressure from individuals because they have very, very passionate ideas about where they think things can be eliminated. I'm going to be looking very, very carefully at those kinds of suggestions and the kind of influence that you as individuals may be feeling around those. And if I feel that the risk assessment is greater than the evaluation of the whole impact, I'll be looking very carefully at the not only the motivation, but the full impact of making a decision, taking a decision in that regard. And those are, right now, I feel that those are the principles and the standards that we've put in place, and I feel that that is a good place to start. If there are things that come up, I'll just have to be very frank with individuals, with counselors, or the staff, as I have been, about areas that I think need to have a different type of consideration. I hope that provides you with some clarity.
Through you, Chair.
Mr. CAO,
Chair,
further comment?
if I could, and maybe this helps also provide a little context, the amendments need to pass by council by resolution. So like anything else we discuss and bring forward, and there's been many resolutions that council has sought to bring forward, they do require a level of research. It does require making sure that there's consensus amongst your colleagues. So on everything, potentially, does that mean that it's going to take a little bit more work? I can't speak not knowing what the amendment may be, but it may require more work, more data, not just a couple of points saying, well, I want the number higher, or I want the number lower, or I don't like this department or that department. It's going to require a level of rigor that's, I don't want to mislead you and think it's not, that a couple of points saying, well, I think the number's too high, and so cut, this line item. It's going to have to drill down a little bit more than that.
Councillor Murray, is that satisfactory?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Timmers, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Charlotte. So a few of my questions have already been answered, but just when you were talking about the amendments, which I think that the template is great, I think it's going to give us a lot more clarity, and we can see the items clearly, and there'll be time for staff. When it's written, I think we'll be able to really evaluate, any amendments coming forward in a different way. And so I think it's a good thing. I think it's a positive. I guess my question is around the amendments and the vetoes. And I understand they need to be in ahead of time. Sorry, my computer froze. I had to shut down, but so I don't have the dates right in front of me. But so prior to the first meeting, they've got to be in the Friday before. I understand that. So staff have time. So when an amendment is being put in, will council be aware of that amendment before? Are we going to see it when it's put in, or we're going to see it at the meeting when we're actually going to talk about it?
Director Tunikaitis?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. I see the clerk nodding. I'll try to answer, and then I will allow her to jump in. But I believe what we discussed is we will try to publish that in advance on the agenda, but depending the complexity of that and when it comes into us and how long it takes, it could be the day of the meeting, but we will try to do it at least the day before. But you can appreciate that really only gives us about a day to do what we need to do. So we will do our best effort, and then it would be published on the agenda for all of council and the public to see. She's nodding at me, so
Okay.
I sense she approves.
Yeah, I just think that's really important, that if we have, there could be a number of amendments, and I would hate to think that we're now at the table and we've got the amendments in front of us, and we haven't had time to digest it and really, understand the implications of what's being asked. The same as with the vetoes. I feel like we need to have prior time. And I know we're trying to tighten the timelines, and I'm supporting that, but I just would hate for council to have their first look at it, on the agenda when we're expected to make a decision that quickly. That's my only comment, so. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timmers. And we have Councillor Mikulik next, remotely.
Thank you very much. Through you to Charlotte or Mike, I'm just concerned, similar with regards to the timelines and it seems like a pretty quick process. And to table all these motions, to draft them up, to research them, councillors could be away, such as myself. If we wanted to consult with each other, is that enough time? And especially now, my understanding is our clerk's department is going to be shorthanded, perhaps. Um, should we be concerned? I mean, this is new for us, so I'm trying to go through it like everyone else.
Director Tunakaitis?
Through you, Chair, to the Counselor, the legislated timeline is 30 days maximum. So there is an element of this that we don't have a lot of control over. We're proposing 27 to keep to the council meeting timeline, so it's not a significant reduction of the legislated timelines. What I can tell you is we have that placeholder meeting on the 24th for amendments. Council can certainly bring forward amendments at that meeting. If you feel that you've needed more time, that's within the timeline and your purview. But it may also be that you get to November 12th, you decide you've read what you need to read, you've heard what you need to hear, and there is nothing further that's required after that. So there's, I think, some flexibility that's built into the process as much as we could by providing multiple meetings, multiple opportunities. So you can, to the question even with Councillor Timmers, if you're not ready with a capital amendment by the 5th, you can still bring something forward to the 12th regarding the capital budget. So that timeline is yours. I would suggest that in order to make it easy for all of us to follow, it will be nice if we can keep the capital discussion more centered around the 5th and the operating more around the 12th. But it's certainly up to your discretion when you bring those amendments forward. And we've tried to provide as much flexibility and 3 meetings to provide as much time for discussion and your consideration as possible.
Councillor Miklick?
No, thank you for that. It's just like typically, there's like almost 2-3 weeks or more between meetings, and then we have discussion. So this is pretty quick, especially when trying to get staffed. We have to come up with our justification for the amendment. We have to do some research and then some costing, and it just seems like a pretty quick process, like 5 days turnaround time. That's just my thought.
Councillor Miklick, before you proceed, I think the CAO has a comment to make on your commentary.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I just think it's important, because this is new for everyone, that we put a finite point on this for residents that may be watching. It is in our timeline, it is in our legislation, it is the province's timeline, the province's legislation. And so it's new for all of us, it's new for staff as well, and I think, when I talk to my other CAO colleagues, is it seamless? Not necessarily, but we work through it. And I think, as Charlotte's highlighted, if we need an extra meeting or if we need something in between, we will work to make sure that occurs. If council needs to reach out to staff and we need to help you differently or more than we have in the past, we'll be available to do that. I think it is a learning process for all of us, and so while I think it is different and change is never easy, it isn't change that we've brought on, it's change that's been brought on to us and on us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and just a point of clarification as well. I believe as well, the staff will be assisting with the costing, so it won't be up to council to have to break all those numbers down for each amendment. So go ahead, Councillor Miklick, with your second question.
I think I'm good at this time. Appreciate that response. I think, like it's new. We'll get through it. We'll figure it out, and for all we know, it might be the better way forward than we're used to. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Miklick, and I think the mayor has a comment as well. Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Maybe a change that we could make, which some councils are more accustomed to having conversations, and so maybe one of the things that would help us, if we have an idea, that we talk about it with our colleagues. You don't need to be concerned about coming to the mayor to talk about your idea. I mean, the intention isn't The intention is to build an amendment that's really functional and something that can go forward in a very meaningful way. So it doesn't need to be a secret. We need to work on it. And then you take the ideas that people have given you and make the adjustments so that you're presenting something that is the most effective. It's not about having gotcha moments when you get at the meeting. That's not what this is about. It's about trying to get everybody's ideas flowing in the same direction. And if we can do that successfully, time will not go against us. It'll be in our best interest. So there's no question that it's going to be busy, but I think the process, I think, can be very, very productive if we use it to our advantage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And Vice Chair Reimer, up next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Russell. Thank you to the mayor and CEO for their opening comments, and thank you to the mayor for her just more recent comments. I think there's a lot of high horsepower, high capacity people in this room, and I think we view it as a challenge. I think we can get this done and still do the same robust budget process we always have. We've always been moving in the same direction, as the mayor said, and I'm confident we're going to get this done as well. Thank you, Charlotte, for your presentation. I have a question. One of my questions, Councillor Timmers asked about the timing and how we got those vetoes to us ahead of the meeting, so thank you for that. But also more of curiosity, on page 5 of your presentation, it just goes through, and I want to make sure I'm reading it correctly, it goes through all the steps. So the mayor tables the budget, council review period, mayor's veto. Other than a few legislative and paper pen exercises, those all happen in a meeting. So why, if everything happens, let's say all those were implemented, the veto and the council override, why is there a waiting period? Why does not the actual approval of the budget happen in a meeting? Why is it it seems to be time sensitive or time driven as opposed to in a meeting. So just looking to you for some insight on that, just more out of curiosity than anything.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, and I may need the clerk to chime in again, because, so what I would say, thank you, the clerk is coming to the podium. What I would say is that in reading the legislation, it's very timeline focused, but I think what we've done in recommending that the mayor and council shorten their periods to coincide with the timing of meetings is to allow for that to essentially happen. But say, for example, the mayor may need some time to think about her veto, and if we shorten that period, then that shortens your period until the next meeting. So I don't know if I just made that sound more confusing, but I'll turn it over to the clerk if she has anything else to add.
No, I think you've explained it really, really well tonight. So it just gives everybody a chance to review the information. Like the CAO had mentioned, the timeline is driven by the province and what they have dictated in this legislation. So we don't really have a lot to work with in terms of that 30 days. But what council is able to do is put forward what the finance team has included in the report tonight, was to slightly shorten that period. So this isn't unlike any other budget process that we've been in before. So as council remembers over the years, we've done this in a very similar way. So we've done the capital meetings, then we do the operating meetings. In and around that, you're allowed to make those amendments. We've included another meeting, as Charlotte has mentioned, to allow for an amendment meeting, strictly if you still have amendments to bring forward. This also gives the mayor, after all those amendments are heard, this gives her an opportunity to see if she wants to veto anything. Now, there could be, let's say, at November 12th, when we're done our presentations, council has put forward some amendments, and it could be that the mayor has decided, you know what, hypothetically, I'm not going to veto anything. There are no more amendments. I'm not really going to veto. We've heard everybody agrees, and then essentially this budget would be adopted as amended. So that's where we lie with that. If there, and you picked up on it in a few slides previously, that if you decided to bring forward amendments or you need some extra time, there's built-in periods where there is that flexibility to go forward. But the veto does allow for the mayor to do that as well. So just like council has a moment to reflect and provide amendments, so does the mayor. Does that answer the question there?
Thank you, Julie. Vice Chair Reimer?
Okay, I'm good, I think. Yeah, well, that's fine. I'm just thinking through the,
Through you, Chair, if I can just add, I mean, I know there's a lot of answers today. I think the short answer is that things could be shortened further. But then we were trying to balance some of the questions that came forward with councilors earlier, trying to make sure they have enough time to deliberate and consider. So I think, we're learning on this journey together. And so we've provided a bit of extra time, but yes, exactly as the clerk said, if at that time, say for example, at the November 12th meeting, if council has no further amendments and the mayor wishes to shorten her veto period because she has no vetoes, then the override doesn't apply because there are no vetoes, and it could be done at that point in time. So that's where I was saying there are multiple outcomes that could happen here depending on how things progress at each stage.
thank you, Charlotte and Julie. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Reimer. Councilor Patriva? Go ahead.
Great, all right. Thank you, Chair Russell. And to Mayor Easton's point, too, not only discuss, and maybe this would be a good idea, if you have an amendment, to copy everyone. So it's not a surprise, so it's not a got you. So everyone is in the loop, and then you can do your due diligence, and you can come prepared to the meeting to have the fulsome discussion. Telephone conversations are great ideas to add, because you know what? Emails, unfortunately, have tone and connotation. And, but yeah, everyone be collaborative in the process. It's a new thing. And yeah, no one's out to pull anyone's pants down in a meeting and shock you with things, right? The gotcha. That's not what we're trying to do, right? It's new, it's different. But I think that same collaborative approach that we always have, we can exercise it quite easily going forward. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Patriva. Madam Clerk, any commentary? No? You have a look. I've seen it before.
You know me well.
Go ahead.
Thanks to the chair. I just wanted to state that, I just want to make sure that council understands that those amendment forms will be made public in the agenda for sure. And if there are certain amendments, I mean, yes, you're more than welcome to share with members of council, but I just wanted to be clear that first and foremost, that those get forwarded as soon as possible, so that we give staff the time that they need so that we can give you an informed decision as accurate as possible, right? So it is a new process, and I'm hoping that we can work together to make this a successful outcome for sure.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just a clarification, sorry. If there is an amendment set forth, and after a little bit of back and forth amongst councilors, after the email is sent and copied on everybody, if there is a tweaking to the amendment before it becomes official, can we amend the amendment before it actually hits the table?
So we would treat any amendment like we always do. And so when that gets brought onto the floor as an amendment, and we're ready to hear that amendment, council would then be able to amend the amendment. How did I know that you were going to ask that question?
And I'm sorry, and I meant to specify, I mean, prior to it hitting the floor. Like if Councilor Patriva sends something in and I see them like, ooh, I was thinking something similar, and I say, hey, maybe if we tweak this a little, I'm on board, that type of thing, can we amend before it hits the table?
So prior to that getting published, that's a conversation that I wouldn't know. So I would say that you work with that counselor. If that counselor has shared that prior to giving it to the clerk, that you do your due diligence beforehand. When that gets brought forward to me, that then gives me a chance to publish that, work with the staff in order to bring those answers forward. But once that hits the floor, that's when amendments will be heard at that time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Patriva? Go ahead. Second question?
Oh, I'm still, okay,
Still
no,
on,
no,
still
just a
on.
follow-up, because of that, so, so we do the amendment, and we copy everyone, and we have a discussion, and we make a change. So when you come with your published amendments, the first one, can we say, hey, we've come to a consensus, let's throw that one out and put this one in? Is that, because you don't want to have a meeting before a meeting, or a meeting within a meeting, or a meeting via email. Oh,
It was a great question. Let's pause for a 5-minute break and let's discuss. Thank you.
good, we're good, you're good.
All right, we are now reconvened from the recess, and we have Councillor Timmers up next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Charlotte and perhaps Madam Clerk as well, because it is a procedural question. So again, about the amendments that are brought forward, which I think is great. I like this. I actually like this format. When they come to the table for council to discuss an amendment, are we now able to amend the amendment? Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that.
So, thank you for that question, Councillor, and through you to the chair. Yes, you are able to treat that amendment as we would treat any other amendment.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then at the end of discussing the amendment, then there's a motion to accept it?
And then we do the vote, for
Okay.
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. And just one other question. So the template we have here for amendments, is there a template that would be different for vetoes? And what does a veto look like? And how do we present that to the table?
That's a great question. I would, so through you to the chair, I would say that I haven't seen a template for a veto. It's literally just something that the mayor would announce that she has a veto. But I haven't seen anything. But it would be in writing, similar to the mayor's decisions and any other statements that she's made through the Strong Mayors. So it's something that she would state, and that would go again into on her page, Strong Mayor Power page. But also we would include that also into the agenda.
And through you, Chair, just one more question on the veto. So, but there's an opportunity for council to veto the mayor's veto.
Yeah, it's
Correct?
the override.
So will there be a
Which is-
template that we would use? Like
No.
what would that look like?
Yeah, so it's just a vote, and it's a 2/3 vote. So what happens is, so they call it the override. So council would bring forward an amendment, right, to the budget, and you would have a template to fill out. And the mayor would have that time frame to decide if she's going to veto one of those amendments. And when that happens, it would be similar to, like I just said, any other written direction to the clerk that I want to veto that. What happens is there's a vote on that, and council would end up, if they choose to override that veto, that's a 2/3 vote, which the mayor can also vote as well.
So-
Should that veto fail, we go forward. Should the override pass, that gets included into the budget as adopted.
Okay, so just one more question, Chair.
Go ahead.
So thank you for that. I just want it clear in my mind. So say we do want to veto, we want the override. It wouldn't be, we don't have to write out a template. It would just be, I want to put on the table that I would like to override that veto. We need a 2/3, and then we vote. Okay, got it.
That's correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Timmers. And just another point of clarification, Madam Clerk. On the mayor's veto, again, I know it's linked to December the 2nd, which is not an actual meeting. It's a Tuesday after a meeting. So would that, if she's expressing a veto or throwing a veto out, is that linked to a meeting, or she's just putting it through a council or a correspondence to council and to the clerk?
I can provide some information through you, Chair. Basically, that date is a date that was selected in order to meet the mayor's veto timelines, but provide enough time until the override meeting for council's override period. So it would be published on the mayor's website, and then provided to council, and that's the reason for the date. The reason for the date is to meet those legislated timelines. If it was released earlier, then it wouldn't stretch until the December
15th?
15th. Yeah, I don't have it up on the screen either. It wouldn't stretch the December 15th meeting, so that's why we picked the 2nd, so that you would have enough time for that override, council would, but then also that the mayor would have time to give consideration for whether she wishes to veto the amendments.
Okay, thank you. Good. Okay, Councillor Mikulik, you're up next.
Thank you very much. Through you to Julie, hearing the conversation with Councillor Pachariva about sharing ideas, sharing amendments, discussing various things amongst ourselves as council, should we be including yourself on that correspondence, or just to keep us from, like, I'm concerned about the quorum issues with those sorts of discussions that occur offline or not in public.
Thanks, Councillor. That is a good question. And so through the chair to you, I would say, Council, you're aware of your code of conduct, right? You're aware of that code of conduct policy. And we've talked about what that means through quorum and discussion. And so I would say that you make sure you're following the rules and you're being accountable and transparent as much as possible. So I will remind council that, we don't move business outside of a meeting, and so that you're cognizant of when you're chatting, how you're chatting, and what kind of information you're sharing.
Thank you very much. So just maybe a thought that perhaps maybe what if we were to those sorts of discussions or those sorts of amendments, like, you see the chairs or the vice chair and the chair on those particular items to avoid that possibility. Would that make sense? Like, and again, like, this is all new for all of us, so just trying to get an idea of a better way or a new way or a way.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Mikulik. I think the CAO has a comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. I mean, so at the end of the day, it's not about do you CC staff or not CC staff. I think it's meant to be a collaborative process. So if you're unsure, if you want more information, if you're crafting some sort of decision or you're crafting some sort of idea, I think that's where you reach out to staff and seek input from us. This isn't an adversarial relationship. I know sometimes budget, staff versus council seems to be the way it goes, but really, if you're looking to make an amendment to a budget, you're going to need staff, and you're going to need to loop in staff. So I suggest do that early and often. You're going to need to loop in the mayor. It is the mayor wants to take a very collaborative approach, but it is a mayor's budget of which there's veto opportunities for. So it isn't about CCing the chair or the vice chair as much as it is loop staff in when you're developing something, and we can give you ideas. At the end of the day, it's up to you whether you choose to bring it forward or not, and can you get council support and the mayor's support so that vetoes don't occur, so that you have the right amount of information, so that if your objective is to lower a budget, amend a budget, we're all on the same page with that. So I would suggest if you want to CC your colleagues, that's up to you. I think as the clerk said, you're not there to advance the business of council. You're there to share ideas collaboratively with your colleagues. And then I would suggest where possible, loop us in earlier rather than later. We're there to help you. We're there to give council information. At the end of the day, it's your decision, but we are the ones that will provide you the data in order to be able to do that. Okay.
Councillor Mikulik?
Yeah, fair enough. It's just with amendments, with anything you're trying to gather support, and you're usually trying to loop in as many votes as possible. So especially with veto power and all this other, powers that come with it. So that's the concern. So whenever there's a vote, there's a need for support. So again, that's just my comments. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Mikulik. And again, I think it's important to realize that we're all on the same road together. It may be a little bumpy, but everybody in the room and outside the room is on it together, holding hands, singing Kumbaya as we go down. So we'll talk about those amendments as they start coming in. But before we do, I do have a question for our clerk and Director Tunakaitis. In the report, it does specify that vetoing certain bylaws that, or the mayor is subject, or is given power to veto certain bylaws that may interfere with the provincial priority, and then it lists the priorities of two, building 1.5 million new residential units by December 31st, constructing and maintaining infrastructure to support housing, including transit roads, utilities, and servicing. It then further goes on to say it is the mayor's discretion whether a bylaw or matter that advances or interferes with the provincial priority may be vetoed. Can the mayor veto amendments that are not included in those priorities? Can the mayor veto amendments that do not fall under either of those two priorities? Like say, again, I'm not going to, let's pick on rain barrels for a brief second. Sorry to all our climate activists out there. If we were to do an amendment to remove rain barrels or add rain barrels, could the mayor veto that as it would not align to one of those specific priorities? Just as an example.
So the CAO has his mic on, and I'll hand it over to him.
So through you, Mr. Chair, definitely the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the challenge with the legislation is these priorities are very general in nature. And I would suggest, to my provincial colleagues, the deliberately general in nature, that you can tie a lot of things into advancing even those two priorities around infrastructure. And, you use rain barrels as an example. I could probably, if I needed to, make the case that eliminating water from our subsurface infrastructure addresses the longevity of that said infrastructure. And so I do think the province has left it very general. They really should be focused to those two priorities, but I have seen where a number of my colleagues are challenged to point to how they don't relate to those two. And so I think the province has deliberately left it general. So my long way of saying.
It's a catch-all.
It's a catch-all, and really the mayor should stick to those particular priorities, but those priorities are general in nature and a bit of a catch-all.
Thank you, Mr. Sayo. And again, under servicing, I was thinking the same thing, that really does, again, give breadth to any potential inclusionary options down there. But I think the mayor has a comment on it, or are you going in the queue? Either way, the floor is yours, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would say that in general terms, if something comes up that really is out of the blue, and it's never been on an agenda, if there's never been a report, if there's really never been any discussion about it, and it's just a bright idea that's sitting the table, it would certainly warrant more discussion. So if we'd never had a discussion about the rain barrels, and I just happened to be talking to our coordinator of climate change, so I knew about the surface water issue, I could probably make it into almost anything. But I really think that we're usually more honest with each other than trying to play games. And so we just need to call that kind of thing out. If it's not right, it's not right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And seeing no further questions, last go round, none. There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer that Budget Committee receive report FN-0925 regarding the overview of the strong mayor budget for information, and recommend that Council decrease the time period as set out in subsection 7-3 of OREG 53 or 530/22 to pass a resolution making an amendment to the proposed budget to ensure alignment with the timelines in Appendix C. And recommend that Council decrease the time period as set out in subsection 710 of OREG 530/22 to override the head of Council's veto of an amendment to the proposed budget to ensure alignment with the timelines in Appendix C. And request that the mayor decrease the time period as set out in subsection 7.6 of OREG 530/22 to veto a resolution passed by Council to ensure alignment within the timelines in Appendix C. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I will go ahead and close that vote, and that carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Devan. We are now considering item 8.2, 2026 budget introduction. The CEO and Director of Finance and Treasurer will now provide a presentation. CEO Kirkopoulos and Director Tunakaitis, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, the CAO has so kindly waved over to me to take the reins here, so I will do so. So thank you. So we just finished talking about the legislated process, how we will take Lincoln's regular budget process and make it fit within those legislated timelines. And then now we're going to talk a little bit more about our specific budget and the introduction. So we'll talk about the mayor's directive that she issued with respect to the budget, our engagement strategies, and a little bit about how the town budget works. On May 20th, 2025, Mayor Easton issued the mayoral directive MDI 2025-01, directing the CAO and staff to prepare the 2026 budget for the town of Lincoln based on the following principles. 1, fiscal responsibility and sustainability, using long-term financial sustainability and supporting the town's asset management plan and service delivery. 2, council strategic priorities. So strategic priorities should guide the budget development and a focus on community infrastructure, economic growth, environmental resilience, and inclusive service delivery. 3, collaboration with council. To actively engage members of council, including the chair and vice chair, and incorporate council input into the development of the draft budget. 4, public engagement, incorporating community engagement strategies to gather resident and stakeholder input. And 5, legislative compliance. So the Municipal Act does not allow municipalities to operate on a deficit basis or to take out debt to fund ongoing operations. Debt can be taken out for major capital projects. This is referred to as a balanced budget, which means budgeted revenues equal expenditures. Lincoln's budgets, like most municipal budgets, are prepared on a modified accrual basis, which is similar to a cash basis with a few modifications. This is designed to ensure that money coming in equals money going out. We've talked about this many times before, but building a budget is like the balancing act that our residents do with their own household budgets. We weigh needs versus available funds, and we consider affordability and cost to the taxpayers. This applies to operating and capital, but it's especially true for our 10-year capital forecast. Council instructed staff to remap that 10-year forecast some time ago, and that's I would describe it as an iterative process. So it's not a one-time event, but we're constantly looking at the funds that we have available, the projects that are in the forecast, and continually remapping that. Where do property taxes go? I think that it is very common that people don't realize that over half of the property tax bill in Lincoln goes to the region of Niagara. So right now, as our CAO said in his opening remarks, 63% in total goes to the region and the school boards, and the town of Lincoln keeps 37%. And over to the right of this graphic, I won't read it all out to you, but we use our 37% for all of the programs and the projects that we have that are our responsibility. So with the strong mayor powers, some things have changed, but some things are fairly consistent, as we've said. Our budget process still has 6 phases to it, and they're listed on this slide. Phase 1 is prepare. The budget schedule is prepared. Departments review services and provide estimated costs based on service levels established by the mayor and council. Meetings are held with the mayor and council to understand priorities and community feedback. And I know we've talked about this before, but all through the year, we're having conversations. All through the year, there are council meetings, staff are listening, council is directing us. We take those things and we allow them to inform our budget process. Town staff monitor trends, broader statistics, financial projections, inflation rates, and growth projections. And capital budgets are prepared for anticipated projects based on asset management planning and needs that arise. Phase 2 of our budget process is engage. We have a budget survey to understand community priorities and knowledge of the budget process, a dedicated page on speakuplincoln.ca to engage and inform, social media campaign to promote the survey and inform and educate, and print and digital advertising in local media outlets. Speak Up Lincoln is the main point of engagement and source of information on the budget process. We have a dedicated page, and it includes a video about how your budget works. It's a great video. I highly recommend it to anyone who's looking to learn more information about the town budget. Key dates, budget presentations, infographics, the past budget information, prior year budget book. We have a budget survey. This year we have a new budget prioritization tool which allows people to allocate a certain envelope of money between items that they'd like to give a little more or a little less to. I will give a little plug that our survey closes on October 5th, so anyone looking to fill that out should get in there and have their say. And we also have contact information for the mayor, the budget chairs, the treasurer, and the deputy treasurer. We've added also a link to the Niagara Region's budget page. So to the point that I was making earlier in the meeting, that more than half of the property tax bill goes to the region. While we don't have control over that process here locally, I think it's important for people to be able to go and access that information, inform themselves, and understand what's going on with that more than half of their bill. So we also have a 3-month digital campaign. This year we created budget postcards which could be distributed to promote the survey and engagement. And yours truly, myself and our deputy treasurer, we were at Fling Off King this weekend just talking to people, trying to encourage them to participate in this survey and getting some feedback from them. So, huge lineup to talk to me there. And phase 3 of the budget process is develop. The mayor provides direction concerning priorities and continues to meet with staff regarding budget drivers and opportunities. Staff continue to develop the budget, including stakeholder engagement. Many services, it's important to say, have regulatory and legislative requirements, rate studies, or master plans. So I know the mayor was referring to that earlier in terms of the type of criteria that she's looking for in terms of amendment forms. We try to make the budget align with those master plans and studies that council's already approved. And some costs are based on decisions made in previous years, such as the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital funding or the Community Improvement Plan. From year to year, our budget key drivers don't change significantly, but I think it's always worth talking about because it does have a big impact on the budget. Growth impacts our costs because with growth and more residents is more services that need to be provided, and it also impacts development charge revenue that comes in to help pay for those services. We have service delivery expectations. We want to provide great customer service to the residents and the taxpayers and the businesses. We have technological requirements. We have a lot of capital infrastructure to maintain. We have inflation that we face in terms of our costs, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of slides. And we also have grant funding. So if we get new grant funding, it can help offset, but sometimes we also lose grant funding, and then that has an impact as well. Compensation is a driver because we are a service-based organization. We have cash flow timing, and we have fixed and variable costs. So there are some costs that really don't go down regardless what happens to revenue levels or services. We have the former BDSS site, legal and regulatory requirements, and we also have drivers from fire rescue services. So when we have items like increased calls, increased responses, that has an impact on our costs as well. So I wanted to take a little minute and talk about inflation because it is very common that when I receive inquiries from members of the public, they're asking about why property taxes don't necessarily increase at the rate of the consumer price index. And I think it's worth talking about because the consumer price index is not really, it's based on a typical household basket of goods, so items like groceries, heating for your household, but our costs are more related to items like fuel, municipal insurance, software costs, things like that. So I wanted to just give a handful of examples of what we have been facing in recent years. Fleet snowplow trucks have increased in cost by 41% from 2022 to 2025. Fire pumper trucks have increased 108%. So that means they've more than doubled in cost from 2019 to 2025 for comparable models. Most software costs are increasing 8 to 10% per year, and some that we looked at have doubled in a single year. Fire bunker gear has doubled in cost from 2019 to 2025, and town insurance premiums have increased by over 80% since 2020. So these inflationary increases place a significant demand on the Capital Reserve Fund, and they've widened the infrastructure gap. So the infrastructure gap is the difference between the amount that we need to give every year in order to fund all of our capital assets, so trucks, roads, bridges, all that. That's about as good of an example as I can give. So we know how much we need every year to fund that, and then we know how much we're currently giving. Well, when the cost of those things really increases at a significant rate, that gap widens. And I think it's a really important part of the discussion to have. So why have we been trying to bridge that gap? Why has council been approving an increased transfer to infrastructure, or as the CAO likes to say, putting more money in the bank? This is the reason, because of the increase in costs and trying to get ahead of those. During the pandemic, many municipalities, including Lincoln, kept property increases low while costs were increasing significantly. The property tax increases in recent years are to a large extent the after effects of right-sizing the budgets to reflect the increased costs, smoothing them over time. So what happened is most municipalities, when the pandemic happened and people were in tough times, people were stressed out, and we didn't know what was going on, and then costs started to go through the roof. I'm sure most people who were home and were trying to renovate their house and saw what happened to the cost of lumber and even some of their supplies can remember. Costs went through the roof, but a lot of municipalities didn't increase their property taxes in 1 year in order to reflect that. So when you see what's been happening here in Lincoln, or you've probably read about it in the newspaper, you've seen it at the region of Niagara, you're seeing it across Ontario, the reason that people are seeing increases now that they feel is not necessarily in line with today's cost increases, it's because we're still catching up. We're still catching up from those increased costs that happened back then. So that talks about budget drivers. Phase 4 is consolidate. Budgets are compiled and reviewed by the finance department, and the consolidated budget is reviewed by the corporate leadership team. The budget has two main components, the operating budget and the capital budget. They're related to each other because the capital levy and transfers to the reserve funds in the operating budget help fund projects in the capital budget. So we set our operating budget, and then we say, here's how much of those dollars will go into the capital program, and that's why those two things are related. The staff proposed budget is provided to the mayor for review, modification if necessary, and approval. Phase 5, this is basically what we went over in the first presentation tonight: inform, debate, and adopt. The mayor's budget will be provided to council in a budget book with notes from staff regarding significant changes and requests, similar to what you've seen in the past. Capital projects will include description, justification, and funding sources. Staff will also include some visual aids such as maps and pictures. Budget committee meetings will be held, as we discussed earlier, and at the end of the legislative process, the budget will be adopted. So adopt is now the word. There's not an approval process and a vote. There's a budget that gets adopted when the timeline passes. And then phase 6 of our budget process is educate. We ensure proper communication to the broader community on the decisions and strategic investments made by the mayor and council. We use all available means to communicate to the community. So last off, I won't read through all the bullets, but the budget provides a means to accomplish council's strategic priorities and broader organizational goals. And this was still a part of the mayor's directive to us, was to prioritize council's strategic priorities. So there to be a welcoming and connected community, a vibrant and prosperous community, and a responsible and resilient community. And as outlined on this slide, all of the budget processes and the priorities that we go through align with those things. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Director Tunakaitis. I'm a little shocked that you did not have a bigger lineup at the Fling Off King based on the energy provided in that and the thoroughness. I wrote to talk to Director Deanne to see if we can get you a better location next year. Members of council, any questions for our director? Oh, Councilor Mikulik, I was just about to turn it off. Go right ahead.
Sorry about that. I just want to talk about engagement. I want to know, how do we determine if we have had successful engagement? How do we, like this Speak Up Lincoln, these surveys? Some people say it's not enough. Some people only 71. I want to know like what the value of the surveys are, the engagement. Like I feel like we need some sort of a marker to say that yes, we've had successful engagement. We've hit this many people, a percentage of the population. Here we are. We're just, and I know it's a tricky question, but I think it's one that forces us to try to encourage more engagement, through use of social media on our own platforms or discussions amongst ourselves. It's something that I'm hearing all the time.
Thank you, Councilor Mikulik. I believe CAO has a comment.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to start this one. I feel like I answer it every year. It is incredibly subjective. Councilor, I think you and I may have gone back and forth. I actually shared a screen capture of an article from the Hamilton Spectator where there were 7 people in attendance at a budget meeting in the city of Hamilton. So and of a community that's almost 600,000 people. So to ask what is the benchmark by which we measure success? I don't think there is a specific benchmark. I think we need to do our best to engage our residents. Budget engagement is not something we do, despite Charlotte just saying, the deadline is on X date. It isn't just about a specific date. It is about year-round. I would suggest to you, most of your senior staff around the table, most of all of you engage with residents year-round. You hear about taxes, you hear about other sorts of issues in the community. When people want to get engaged, they will get engaged. Now, I know there may be people watching who will argue that with me, and I encourage them to reach out and engage with me on that. But if we've seen this chamber full, standing room only if people are against a particular project. So people do get engaged when they care about something, when it impacts them, when it's in their backyard, whatever adage you want to use. I would suggest to you that the 7 people that showed up to the budget meeting in Hamilton is reflective of when I was doing budget engagement in Hamilton some 15 years ago, and the number was probably 6 people then. So now it's 7. I suspect it's grown. I have no doubt that the councilors there are saying the exact same thing as you. And there's been a ton of resources, time, and money put into promoting that. We do significant engagement online. We reach out to residents who engage with us. All of you receive the same emails I do from specific residents who are very engaged in the budget. I see Director Deanne's put on his camera. He's going to chime in here as well. We've tried multiple things where we use the tax inserts, where we use scales by which people can, build their own budget. So I would tell you, and I remember the criticism, whether it was last year or the year before, that 300 people is not enough, and one shouldn't make a decision on that. I probably agree with you. I've always said surveys are snapshots. make a decision based on a whole bunch of variables, expert advice around the table, your own values, the values you hear at an election time, the values you hear when you're engaging residents in public meetings, and they show up. Ward 3 is one of the best attended when we have ward meetings. You know the issues that come up there as well as I do, if not better. So I would suggest to you that, as much as I may be passionate about this topic, it's because I know a bit about it, and I've been doing it for almost 3 decades, engagement specifically. And so I will challenge anyone who says it's not successful, because whether it's 300 people, whether it's 500 people or 1,000 people, if you have good conversations, meaningful conversations, then to me that's that's a success. And so I will get off my soapbox now and turn it over to Director Deanne maybe to provide some further comments.
Thank you, CEO, and Chair, through you to the councillor. I mean, Mike had a good point, councillor, in terms of, engagement is a little bit subjective. But let me tell you, from my perspective, I'm going to be happy knowing that we've given everyone the opportunity to be engaged. We've gone through the digital aspect of promoting Speak Up Lincoln. We've gone through social. We've done print media in terms of the newspapers. We've had staff at events to help promote the budget and the survey. And from my perspective, I'll sleep easy at night because we've given all those opportunities for people to engage. And also, I just want to point out that engagement doesn't necessarily mean people filling out the surveys or actually asking questions or getting involved. It's also just informing themselves, because I look at Speak Up Lincoln on the right side of my screen here, and we've got a lot of information on the budget. So people are also looking just for information. So that's also an element of engagement as well, councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Deanne. I believe the mayor also has a comment as well. Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. It is a good question to ask, and it's a good question to justify. And I have to say that, every time I present my mayor's report or at the beginning of the meeting, we have comments. We're not just talking to the public because we want them to know that we're working on their behalf. We want them to know where we've been, who we've been talking to, how often we're out, and to get the idea that this is an engaged council. It's an engaged staff. When we go out to see new businesses and have a conversation with them, we're not just there because it's a good thing to do. We truly want to know what this business is all about. What kind of people do you hire? What educational levels do they require? Can we influence on your behalf a different system at the college or the university level? And so by the end of the week, unless you are completely not getting around, unless you're just not here, you are paying attention and storing up information. And I run at large, so I pay attention to everything that goes on across the town. And I'm not really interested in what individuals have to say because they have a strong voice. I want to know how that strong voice matches with the same kind of an idea that somebody in 2 or 3 other wards had to say. I think that our methodologies are sound. I think the first year that I was mayor, we had 12 people interested in the budget. Nobody comes to delegate anymore. I can tell you back in the 80s, people used to line up in the chambers. People do not do that anymore. They use many other means that are suitable to them. And I would challenge that any residence, any place where people have communal living could figure out with their internal governance structures a means by which everybody could be exposed to a questionnaire or to a meeting like this so that they could be kept well informed, or even on issues that are close to them geographically, they could do that. Those means are available to them, and I am very confident that our staff will coordinate that to help them. So I'm not minimizing the feelings that people have, but I do know that there are many, many options and opportunities available to them. And I think that the opinions that we bring to the table are based on facts that people have told us. Before Councillor Timmers and I left the Fling on King, I'll tell you, we had learned a great deal in 2 hours about what people liked and didn't like, but mostly it was about that event and who should be called back which band should be called back, and other kinds of important information that people wanted to share. It was a huge, huge crowd. And if we think that we shouldn't be spending money on it, I'm here to tell you that the court is out on that one. They want it, and they want us to pay for it. So that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mikulik?
No, I appreciate all of that. It's just when I hear, you know, we had 300, you know, survey results. We had terrific this or wonderful that, and it's based on numbers that are relative to. I'm trying to quantify the definition of a successful engagement process, particularly, especially with some of the last items we've been having where, you know, folks, residents were concerned about that level of information or access or, you know, opinions that were sought after and how they were sought after. So that's just why I bring that up, because we're sitting here doing this meeting and then we're going to find out, like, you know, 6 months from now, like from residents that are not happy, how come I didn't know? And I just want to make sure that, you know, they were given every opportunity to say something, voice their concerns, and they got to stop watching the Buffalo Bills or the, you know, Toronto Maple Leafs, one team or the other. They got to pay attention to what's going on, what's most expensive and what's most important to them. That's the affordability at home.
Oh, hold on. Thanks, Councillor Mikulik. I just wanted to make a comment. I think I would throw in the Toronto Blue Jays in there as well. But also, I think it's important to note as well, again, Charlotte, or Director Tunakaitis had mentioned in the report, the number, and I think the CAO did as well, the number of different opportunities that residents do have. So there is every potential input / output, depending on technology, demographic, and again, overall ability that residents have to voice their thoughts, concerns on the budget, either in a very specific time frame or in general time over the course of the year. So I think hopefully we've got them covered off on that. So again, I think it's one of those things that when they see the bill, there's always that reactionary notice that, hey, I wish I had an opportunity to discuss this, but they often glaze over those opportunities as they're coming to them in their inbox. But if you had a second question?
And I agree. No, and second question is, you know, we talk about affordability, we talk about, like, you know, needs, wants, what you know, what we have to do, what we can defer 10-year capital projects. So when we talk about affordability and we talk about, like, increases, it doesn't sound like we're in for a decrease as far as a levy goes. How do we determine, or how do we identify that number? The region did it. They said 3.5%. How do we as a municipality determine that affordability number or that target that we send back to staff? Have we done that?
Councillor Mikulik, as you guys know, there was no motion put forward in response to that like there was at the region. I believe the mayor does have a comment on the from maybe the regional side. Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the chances of the region meeting the 3.5% guidance, as it's referred to, are just about as good as us going to Alaska tomorrow. However, some people like floating those numbers, and so that's been going on for a long time. It's also being looked at as one of the main reasons for us having such a huge gap related, Mr. Chairman, to the cost of infrastructure, the work that's getting done, mostly the work that hasn't been getting done. So let me tell you that I am not a fan of floating numbers. I want the facts. I want to know what studies have been done, what are the outcomes of the studies, what are the risks, what are the priorities, what can we leave to another time? And I have instructed the staff, I do not want to see any floating numbers. I want the facts. I want council to have the facts. And then we will decide what we believe is fair. If we if we feel that a number, at that point, when we have all the information, if we feel that the number needs to be adjusted for the very reason that you've mentioned, it's just not affordable, then we will keep grinding away at those numbers and those projects until we're all satisfied that the number is going to be acceptable. But I gave very distinct instructions. I do not want to see any guidance. It's not complete enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mikulik?
Fair enough. No, I understand. It's, I think we're in a unique position because, or any municipality is in a unique position because it's a strong mayor's budget. So I don't know if there is that ability to provide unless it's an amendment made down the road. So thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And again, I think, again, everyone in the room and not in the room tonight, again, has a very good feeling of what is happening in the economy right now, how that is impacting our individual residents, our businesses within Lincoln. And I have no doubt that staff have gone through the budget with over and over. I can see Director Tunuketa shaking her head over and over to try to find the best fit to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible, not only this year and going forward. So again, I look forward to this new process as it unfolds before us. And again, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of back and forth to make sure that we all come to a point where we find that we are in the best position for not only ourselves as council and representatives of the town, but for our residents in the future. So I see no further questions. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Murray that committee receive and file for information report FN-10-25 and associated presentation regarding the 2026 budget introduction. I will now ask the Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I will go ahead and close that vote, and that carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Devan. We have no confidential items. Do we have any committee remarks? No, seeing none. There being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned at 18:52 hours for the mayor. Military time.